Some of you have not been reading the assignments I've been posting and also not looking at the videos I've been posting. And that's pretty clear in reading and writing. So I'm calling this brief little video heads up. It's just you're going to have to pay attention to what I'm asking you to do in your writing assignments, because I'm grading you based on what I'm asking you to do. So, for example, when I ask you to be sure that you punctuate the quotes correctly in a paragraph, that's what I want to see. I'm not going to pay much attention to whether I agree or disagree with the point you're making. I'm going to look carefully to see if the commas and the quotation marks are in the wrong place. For many of you, they weren't. You did something, but you just sort of ignored the assignment I gave you. So heads up. You should be writing better now than you did a month ago. If the quality of your writing isn't getting better, it's likely that your grade will drop for those later assignments, because I'm expecting as I go along more from you based on what we covered each week. So if you don't get better, your grades are going to get worse unless you've been consistently earning A's. Just a reminder that learning is the game here. I posted a handout last week that listed 8 simple rules for punctuating quotes. There are a lot more than 8 rules, but those were the ones that most often cause people problems because they occur all the time. And it's important to know that there are rules, and it's important to understand that if you just guess, you're almost certainly going to get it wrong. It's too precise for that. So look things up. I've recommended that you use the online writing lab website, OWL, from Purdue University. If you search on a rule, such as comma splices, along with the search term OWL, O-W-L, you'll get there. Much of writing really is literally crossing T's and dotting I's. It's doing the tedious attention to detail that's needed to get it right. That's one of the things, maybe the main thing, that separates successful students from unsuccessful students, or useful employees from dispensable employees. Punctuating quotes is a necessity in nearly all university classes because most university writing involves references to research, whether it's biology or history or English. You should not pass a college writing class without learning how to do it. And learning how to do it isn't hard. This is your chance. Do it now. Print out the handout that gave you on punctuating quotes and use it while you were writing. I didn't actually go over that rule. Use a comma to introduce a quotation after a standard dialogue tag, a brief introductory phrase, or a dependent clause. The detective said, comma, I am sure who performed the murderer. The comma there is not optional. It's a requirement. But note that I'm saying after a dialogue tag like that, or an introductory phrase, something that introduces the quote. If you just weave a quote or part of a quote into the flow of your writing without using a dialogue tag like that, then you don't need a comma. In fact, then a comma would be a mistake. So, very easy rule. The next one is probably even easier. Always put commas and periods inside the quotation marks. Squiggly said, comma, I hate packing for a vacation. Period, and then quotation mark. Always. That makes it easy. You don't have to think about it. Just learn it. Put periods and commas inside the quotation marks, not outside them. Yeah, that may be kind of counterintuitive. And keep in mind that I'm only talking about commas and periods. Other marks of punctuation, such as semicolons usually go outside the quotation marks. Question marks go either inside or outside the quotation marks, depending on whether the quote is the question or the quote is embedded in the larger sentence, which asks the question. So you put quotation marks where they belong based on what they mean. You have to think about it. You don't have to think much about periods and commas. Just put them inside the quotation marks. Simple rule, capitalize the first letter of a direct quote when the quoted material is a complete sentence. So Mr. Johnson, who was working in his field that morning, said, capital T, the alien spaceship appeared right before my own two eyes. Well, the alien spaceship appeared is a complete sentence. And since the quote is a complete sentence, it needs to start with the capital. And then I'm putting this in here just to kind of give you a feel for why I may run out of patience or not be as compassionate and understanding as you would like. And the story is that, like you, I was not born knowing how to do any of this. The only reason I do kind of know how to do it is because I put the time in to figure it out. And sometimes that's been a lot of time. What this is just a small piece of the several pages of notes that are part of the works cited pages in the last book I published. I had wanted the book to seem light and breezy, not really a scholarly tome, so I had left out all of the notes when I sent the manuscript to the publisher. They wanted to publish the book, but they also wanted the references put back in there, which means that every quote, every reference to a book or an author needed an accurate citation. But unfortunately, a lot of the material in the book was adopted from speeches and workshops and slideshows I'd been giving around the country over a period of some years. My original notes had all of the bibliographic information, but I had stripped all that sort of thing out for those presentations. And over the years, a lot of it, I just lost track of it. I didn't know where the citations were. And to make it worse, most of the materials were not available online, which means to reconstruct the information, I had to spend weeks in the university library, looking up every article, every book. And by the time I finished, I had to have all of that information in alphabetical order with every comma or colon or parentheses in the right place. The deal with publishing is that it needs to be right. The standard for publication is perfection, which means somebody needs to take the pains to make sure that it is right. Well, whose job is that? Editors pretty much agree, and so do teachers. It's the writer's job. It's your job to pay attention and to get all of that stuff right. One of my favorite writers, Richard Mitchell, in one of his books, he blamed the fact that the country was falling apart, that engines were falling out of airplanes and all that sort of. He blamed it on English teachers because he said it used to be that English teachers taught people to cross every T and dot every I, to get all of the details right, to pay attention, and they had stopped doing that. Well, I don't think we can give English teachers the blame, but maybe a little bit of it. I'm just warning you that I am going to pay attention to all of that sort of stuff. The essay I gave you on writing a paragraph, I told you that what I was looking for was the punctuation correctly. I don't care what your opinion about the movie was. I was barely paying attention to that. I was looking to see if you had every comma where it needed to be. Most of you didn't bother. I'll tell you why that upsets me a little bit, because if you don't bother doing that, it's not worth your time. Then I have to stop and write a little comment or make some kind of mark or do some explanation or look up a link for a website for you every single time, which means, from my point of view, you think my time isn't worth nearly as much as your time. Well, I'm going to disagree with you on that. One of the things all teachers know is that reading a well-done piece of writing is kind of enjoyable and it goes fairly quickly. Reading something that's got 2 or 3 errors per sentence takes forever. You do your part of the work. It's your job to get all those details right. That lets me talk about more interesting things than commas. When I was doing that bibliography, I didn't have all the rules for APA citations memorized. I mean, what do? If I come across a book that has 3 different authors, do I put all 3 of their complete names? Do I just use the first initial of their first name? Or if I have a chapter from a book and the chapter is not written by the main author of the book who's on the title page, how do I record that? I had to look things up. So what did I do? Well, I looked things up. I'm kind of inviting you and challenging you. I want you to do good work that speaks well of your skill and of your character. Because the truth is, it takes character to do good work when doing sloppy work is so much easier. The literary critic Malcolm Cowley once said that no complete SOB ever wrote a good sentence. And what he meant by that is even a sentence, getting a sentence right takes some discipline and some effort and some paying attention. And paying attention when we're all easily distracted, paying attention takes a little bit of character. What I'm challenging you to do is to set yourself apart. Be someone special. Take pains. Get it right. It'll make you stand out in a crowd. Employers will open doors for you. There just aren't enough people who do things right. One of the things I'd mentioned in my posts before the assignment that most of you, or at least many of you, ignored was that you needed to punctuate the titles right. Every single time you use a title, the punctuation is part of the title. It has to be there. Luckily, the rules, there's only 2 of them, and they're very simple. Rule 1, italicize the titles of major works. Major works would be full-length books, magazines. By magazines, I mean the name of the magazine, like Newsweek or People. Newspapers, like the Charcusta or the Missoulian. Movies, plays, at least 3-act plays, and music albums. So when a reader comes to The Mystery of the Missing Briefcase and sees that it's in italics, they know it's not a short story. They know it's a book. The punctuation is always communicating or helping with communication. The second rule is just as simple. Use quotation marks for shorter works. Just a book chapter, not the whole book, an article, a short story, one poem, a song. Shooting an Elephant by George Orwell. You may not be familiar with that work, but you can tell by the way it's punctuated that it's not a book. It's a short work. I should add a note about underlining because some people seem to have been taught that you underline titles. Underlining means exactly the same thing as italicizing something. And when you use underlining is when you're on a typewriter and you don't have access to italics. If you're on a computer and you have access to italics, use italics. Although, as I said, they mean exactly the same thing as underlining. What I've uploaded for this week into the week 8 folder is a proofreading checklist. It's just a list of things that I want you to print out this checklist before you hit submit or publish or turn your work into me. Read through it. You do your part. Save me hours and learn something. Go through the checklist and make sure that everything on the checklist you've paid attention to. If there are things on the checklist that you don't understand, like maybe your 7th grade teacher forgot to teach pronoun case, the difference between he and him. Well, Google it. I mean, it's never been easier to learn this stuff than it is now. It used to be pretty dang hard, but I mean, all of this information is on Google. Google pronoun case. You'll get 10,000 pages, many of which explain it very simply and very clearly. So if there's something there you're not sure what it means, just Google the key term. If that doesn't work or you stay confused, get in touch with me. I don't mind spending time with you. I don't mind meeting you in person if that will help. Um, I just want you to take pains to get it right. Choose the path of excellence. It might take you places you can't even imagine.